Hey everyone, Andre Henik here, and I want to tell you about a guy who started by selling shoes out of his car trunk, literally made the first prototypes in a waffle iron in his kitchen, competed against a German giant that dominated the market, and built the most valuable sports brand in history, worth over $200 billion. We're talking about Fila Найta and Nike, a company that transformed from a scrappy startup importing Japanese running shoes to a global empire that defines athletic culture, innovation, and the just do it mindset. But this isn't a story about overnight success. This is about 18 years of struggle, near bankruptcy moments, an obsessive focus on athletes and performance, and understanding that you're not selling products. You're selling dreams and identity. If you've ever felt outgunned by bigger competitors, if you're in a crowded market wondering how to differentiate, or if you want to build a brand that transcends your product category, this story has lessons you need. Hit that like button if you're ready to learn from one of the greatest brand builders in history. Fila Найta was born on February 24th, 1938, in Portland, Oregon. His father owned a newspaper company, providing a middle-class upbringing but not wealth. Phil was a decent middle-distance runner at the University of Oregon, where he ran for legendary coach Bill Bowerman. Phil wasn't the fastest or most talented, but he was competitive and obsessive about running. After graduating in 1959, Phil went to Stanford Business School for his MBA. While there, he took a class on entrepreneurship where he had to write a business plan. Phil's idea: import high-quality, low-cost running shoes from Japan to compete against the dominant German brands, Adidas and Puma, that were expensive. The insight: in the early 1960s, serious runners wore German shoes, Adidas or Puma. They were the best quality but expensive, $15 to $20 per pair, which was significant in 1960s dollars. Phil believed Japanese manufacturers could produce comparable quality shoes for much less. Using the same manufacturing expertise Japan was applying to cameras and electronics. If he could import Japanese running shoes and sell them cheaper than German brands, he could capture market share from price-conscious runners. This wasn't a revolutionary idea. It was arbitrage. Find good products in one market, sell them in another market where they're unavailable or overpriced. Simple, but potentially profitable. Phil didn't choose running shoes randomly. He chose them because 1. He was a runner. He understood the product intimately. 2. He knew the market. He knew what runners wanted and needed. 3. He had connections. His coach Bill Bowerman was respected in running community. 4. He saw inefficiency. German shoes were overpriced. Japanese could be cheaper. This is classic. Find a problem in a world you understand and solve it. Worse, what industry or community are you already part of? What inefficiencies or problems do you see that outsiders don't notice? What expertise do you have from being an insider that gives you an advantage? Don't start businesses in industries you know nothing about just because they seem profitable. Start in worlds you understand. If you're building in an industry you know deeply, drop insider advantage in the comments. After getting his MBA in 1962, Phil took a trip around the world. When he reached Japan, he visited Onitsuka Communes, later renamed ASICS, a shoe manufacturer. Phil pitched them on becoming their US distributor. He had no company, no track record, no credentials, but he was confident and convincing. The bluff. When Onitsuka asked what company he represented, Phil made up a name on the spot: Blue Ribbon Sports. It didn't exist. He just invented it in that moment. But Onitsuka was interested. They agreed to send him samples. Phil returned to Oregon and partnered with his old coach, Bill Bowerman. They each invested $500, total $1,000, to start Blue Ribbon Sports as official US distributor for Onitsuka Tiger shoes. The early days. Phil kept his day job as an accountant. He sold shoes on nights and weekends out of his car trunk at track meets. Bill Bowerman designed improvements to the shoes and sent suggestions to Onitsuka. He was obsessed with making runners faster through better shoe design. The business grew slowly. They sold a few thousand pairs in the first few years, enough to keep going, but not enough to quit their day jobs. The model: simple distribution arbitrage. Buy Tiger shoes from Japan for $3-5 pair. Sell in US for $7-10 pair. Margin was slim, but volume could make it profitable. This wasn't glamorous. This was grinding. Selling shoes pair by pair, reinvesting every dollar, barely scraping by. Phil and Bill didn't raise millions. They didn't have a fancy office. They sold shoes from a car trunk. The myth of entrepreneurship: big launches, venture capital, instant scale. The reality: Small beginnings, slow growth, unglamorous grinding. Nike's timeline. 1964. Start with $1,000 selling from car trunk. 1965. 1970. Slow growth, barely profitable. 1971. Finally create own brand, Nike. 1972. 1979. Rapid growth but constant cash flow crises. 1980. IPO, finally stable. 1990s, 2000s, become dominant global brand. That's 16 years from founding to IPO. With constant struggle throughout. Are you willing to grind for years before seeing major success? Can you start small and unglamorous, selling one unit at a time? Are you prepared for slow growth and constant challenges? The reality. Overnight success takes 10+ years. Accept this or you'll quit too early. By the late 1960s, Blue Ribbon Sports was growing, but Phil and Bill wanted more. They didn't want to just distribute someone else's shoes. They wanted to create their own brand. But creating athletic shoes required manufacturing expertise they didn't have. Bill Bowerman was obsessed with creating better traction for runners. One morning in 1971, while making waffles, he had an idea. What if we used the waffle pattern to create a shoe sole with better grip? He literally poured rubber into his wife's waffle iron, creating the first prototype of what became the waffle sole, one of Nike's most iconic innovations. This sole provided better traction, was lighter than competitors, and became a key differentiator. The Nike brand launch. 1971. Phil and Bill decided to launch their own brand, Nike, named after the Greek goddess of victory. The swoosh logo was designed by a Portland State student, Carolyn Davidson, for $35. The first Nike shoes featured the waffle sole and were designed specifically for runners by people who understood running. Bill Bowerman wasn't trying to innovate for innovation's sake. He was obsessed with making runners faster. That obsession led him to experiment constantly, cutting up shoes to reduce weight, testing different materials, creating the waffle sole, designing for specific running conditions. The pattern. Obsession with craft, deep understanding, breakthrough innovation. Most innovation doesn't come from brainstorming sessions. It comes from people deeply immersed in their craft, noticing problems and testing solutions relentlessly. Are you obsessed with your craft, or just trying to make money? Do you use your own product constantly and notice every flaw? Are you experimenting with improvements regularly? True innovation requires deep domain expertise and relentless experimentation. Nike grew rapidly in the 1970s, but lived perpetually on the edge of bankruptcy. The problem: cash flow. Nike's model created a cash flow nightmare. Step 1. Order shoes from Japanese manufacturer. Pay upfront or with letter of credit. Step 2. Wait months for shoes to arrive. Step 3. Sell shoes to retailers. They pay in 30 to 60 days. Step 4. Use that money to pay for next order. This meant Nike always needed cash. Now to fund growth 3 or 6 months in the future. The growth paradox. The faster Nike grew, the more cash they needed. Growth was killing them. Phil was constantly begging banks for larger credit lines, negotiating with Japanese manufacturers for better payment terms, stretching payment terms with suppliers, operating with zero margin for error. Multiple near bankruptcy moments. 1975. Bank threatened to cut off credit. Nike was days from running out of cash. Phil scrambled to find alternative financing. 1976. Cash crunch again. Phil considered selling the company or taking on partners he didn't want. 1977. Another crisis. Nike survived only by negotiating extended payment terms. Throughout the 1970s, Nike was like a high-wire act. One misstep and they'd fall. Phil later said, "We were always 30 days from going out of business." Many startups die not from lack of demand, but from running out of cash while growing. The mistake. Focusing only on revenue growth while ignoring cash flow timing. The reality. Revenue cash. You can be growing rapidly and still go bankrupt if cash flow doesn't align. Do you know your cash conversion cycle? How long between when you pay expenses and when you receive payment from customers? Can you fund growth without running out of cash? If you grow 50% this year, do you have the cash to fund inventory, payroll, and operations during the lag? What's your runway? How many months can you operate at current burn rate before needing more capital? Many businesses fail not from bad products, but from bad cash flow management. Don't let this be you. By the mid-1970s, Nike was growing steadily, but Adidas absolutely dominated the athletic shoe market with 70% plus market share globally, and even higher in key categories like basketball and soccer. Adidas wasn't just big. They were the brand. They had Decades of heritage and credibility, relationships with every major sports federation, endorsement deals with top athletes worldwide, superior distribution networks, massive marketing budgets, brand recognition that Nike couldn't match. For context, in 1976, Adidas had roughly 70% of the US athletic shoe market. Nike had maybe 5%. The gap was enormous. Most startups would look at this situation and think, we can't compete. The incumbent is too strong. Phil Knight looked at it differently. They're vulnerable precisely because they're so dominant. They've stopped innovating. Phil's multi-pronged competitive strategy. Prong 1. Target runners first. Dominate a niche. Instead of trying to compete against Adidas across all sports simultaneously, which would require resources Nike didn't have, Phil made a strategic choice. Dominate running first, then expand. Why running? 1. Phil's expertise. He was a runner. Bill Bowerman was a running coach. They understood this world intimately. 2. Growing market. Jogging was becoming a fitness trend in the 1970s. The running boom was starting. 3. Underserved by Adidas. Adidas focused more on soccer and track and field. Running shoes weren't their priority. 4. Credibility building. Win in running, and athletes in other sports would take Nike seriously. The execution. Nike sponsored running events, signed elite runners, advertised in running magazines, and became omnipresent in the running community. By the late 1970s, serious runners knew Nike. They might still wear Adidas for other sports, but for running, Nike was becoming the choice. The lesson. Don't try to be everything to everyone immediately. Dominate one niche first. Use that dominance as a beachhead to expand into adjacent markets. Prong 2. Sign athletes before they're superstars. Nike couldn't afford to sign established athletes at their peak. Adidas had those locked up with big contracts. Phil's insight. Sign promising young athletes before they become famous, when they're affordable. The strategy. Identify athletes with potential. Sign them early at reasonable rates. Provide equipment and support. When they become stars, Nike gets massive brand association for minimal investment. Key early signings. Steve Prefontaine, 1973. Pre was a charismatic American distance runner in the early 1970s. He wasn't the world's best yet, but he had star potential, talent, personality, and a rebellious anti-establishment attitude that fit Nike's brand. Nike signed him early. Pre wore Nike in competitions and became a cult figure in American running. When he tragically died in a car accident in 1975 at age 24, he was already a legend. Pre's association with Nike gave the brand credibility and emotional connection with runners that money couldn't buy. Ilie Nastase, tennis. Signed before he won major titles. John McEnroe, tennis. Signed as a rising star in late 1970s. Alberto Salazar, running. Signed before winning New York Marathon. The pattern. Identify potential, sign early, benefit when they peak. Prong 3. Innovation as differentiation. While Adidas relied on heritage and reputation, Nike competed through relentless innovation. Key innovations. Waffle sole, 1974. Bill Bowerman's waffle iron creation provided better traction and lighter weight than competitors. This became Nike's first major technological edge. Nike Air, 1979. Developed with former NASA engineer Frank Rudy, Nike Air used pressurized gas in the sole for cushioning. This was revolutionary and became one of Nike's most iconic technologies. Visible Air, 1987. Making the air cushioning visible in the heel was part function, proving it existed, part fashion. It became a design signature. Multiple sport-specific designs. Instead of one running shoe for all conditions, Nike created shoes for different surfaces, distances, and runner types. This specialization appealed to serious athletes. The message. Nike. Innovation and performance. Adidas. Heritage and tradition. For athletes focused on winning, innovation beat heritage. Prong 4. American brand identity versus German establishment. Nike leaned into being American, based in Oregon, versus German Adidas. In the US market during the Cold War era, there was pride in supporting American brands against European ones. Nike positioned itself as the scrappy American underdog, fighting the German establishment, built by athletes for athletes, anti-corporate and authentic. Despite growing into a corporation, this patriotic angle created emotional connection beyond product quality. Prong 5. Lifestyle positioning beyond pure performance. By the 1980s, athletic shoes were being worn as casual fashion, not just for sports. Nike recognized this trend early and designed shoes that worked both for performance and as lifestyle products. The cultural shift. Athletic shoes went from equipment athletes wear for sports, fashion statement and identity marker for everyone. Nike positioned to capture both markets, serious athletes and casual consumers who wanted the athletic aesthetic. The turning point. 1984. The Michael Jordan signing. By 1984, Nike was successful in running but struggling in basketball. Adidas and Converse dominated basketball shoes. Nike's basketball sales were declining. They were considering exiting basketball entirely. Then they had an opportunity. Sign a rookie named Michael Jordan. The context. Michael Jordan was the number 3 draft pick in 1984. He was talented but unproven in the NBA. He was not the consensus number 1 pick. Hakeem Olajuwon went first. Adidas and Converse, the dominant basketball brands, showed interest but didn't offer aggressive deals. Jordan actually wanted to sign with Adidas, his preferred brand, but they weren't responsive. Nike's aggressive offer. Nike offered Jordan a deal that seemed insane for a rookie. $500,000 per year for 5 years. Total, $2.5 million. For context, most rookie endorsements were $50,000, $100,000. Nike was offering 5 to 10x market rate. Plus, Jordan would get his own signature shoe line, Air Jordans, unprecedented for a rookie. Plus, royalties on shoe sales. The internal debate. Inside Nike, many thought this was reckless. He's unproven. What if he gets injured? What if he's not that good in the NBA? We're betting the basketball division on one rookie. Phil Knight and Nike executive Sonny Vaccaro believed the bet was worth it. They saw something special in Jordan. Not just talent, but marketability, charisma, competitiveness. The negotiations. Jordan's agent David Falk negotiated hard. Nike agreed to unprecedented terms. $500K year salary, signature shoe line, Air Jordan, royalty percentages on sales, creative input on shoe design. The gamble. Nike was betting that 1. Jordan would be great, not guaranteed. 2. He'd stay healthy, not guaranteed. 3. Signature shoes would sell, unproven for basketball. 4. The investment would pay off, huge risk. If any of these failed, Nike would lose millions and potentially have to exit basketball. The Air Jordan launch. 1985. The first Air Jordan shoes launched in 1985 with revolutionary design. Bold black and red colorway, violated NBA's mostly white shoe rule. Nike Air technology, distinctive design by Peter Moore. Premium price, $65, when most shoes were $30 to $40. The NBA ban controversy. The NBA banned the black or red Air Jordans for violating uniform rules. Shoes had to be mostly white. Nike loved this. They paid Jordan's $5,000 per game fine and used the ban in advertising. The NBA banned these shoes. Fortunately, they can't stop you from wearing them. This controversy generated massive free publicity. The shoes became rebellious, edgy, must-have. The sales explosion. Nike projected $3 million in Air Jordan sales for year 1. Actual result, $126 million in year 1. This wasn't just exceeding expectations. This was a cultural phenomenon. Why it worked. 1. And Jordan's performance. Michael Jordan won Rookie of the Year and became an instant star. The shoes were on the feet of the NBA's most exciting player. 2. Design appeal. Air Jordans looked different from any basketball shoe. They were fashion-forward and bold. 3. Marketing genius. Nike's banned campaign and Jordan's highlights created must-have status. 4. Cultural timing. Hip-hop culture was rising. Sneaker culture was emerging. Air Jordans became status symbols beyond basketball. 5. Quality backed the hype. The shoes actually performed well. They weren't just marketing. They were genuinely good basketball shoes. The transformation. The Air Jordan deal transformed Nike. Before Jordan, struggling in basketball, seen as primarily a running brand, revenue, $900 million, 1984. After Jordan, dominated basketball footwear, became a lifestyle culture brand, revenue, $4+ billion by 1990. The long-term impact. Michael Jordan became the greatest basketball player ever. 6 NBA championships, 5 MVPs, global icon. Every year he played, Air Jordan sold hundreds of millions of dollars. Even after he retired, the Jordan brand, subsidiary of Nike, continues generating $5+ billion in annual revenue. The ROI. Nike's $2.5 million investment, 1984-1989, has generated over $100 billion in cumulative revenue from Jordan brand. This is possibly the highest ROI endorsement deal in business history. The lesson. Phil's bet on Jordan wasn't reckless. It was calculated. He saw potential others missed, structured the deal intelligently, royalties aligned Jordan's interests with Nike's, and had conviction to invest significantly when others were conservative. The Jordan deal exemplifies a crucial entrepreneurial principle. Exceptional returns come from seeing potential before it's obvious and betting accordingly. Why this works. 1. Asymmetric risk. Reward. Downside. Lose your investment. $2. 5M in Jordan's case. Upside. Unlimited. Jordan generated 100B plus. When downside is capped but upside is enormous, these bets are rational even if risky. 2. Contrarian conviction. If everyone sees the opportunity, the price reflects that, and returns are average. The best opportunities are when you see something others don't. This requires independent thinking, domain expertise, willingness to be wrong. 3. All in when conviction is high. Nike didn't make a small tentative bet on Jordan. They went all in with the biggest rookie deal ever. Half measures don't generate exceptional returns. When you have high conviction, bet accordingly. 4. Structure matters. Nike's deal wasn't just salary. It included royalties and signature line. This aligned Jordan's incentives with Nike's success. Smart deal structure can transform good bets into great ones. What potential do you see that others are missing? Is there a trend, person, technology, or market that you believe in strongly but most dismiss? What would a significant bet look like? Not a tentative experiment, a real meaningful investment of money, time, or resources. How can you structure the bet to cap downside while preserving upside? Think asymmetric risk-reward. Limit how much you can lose while leaving unlimited upside potential. Do you have domain expertise to evaluate this opportunity? Phil understood basketball and athlete marketing. This wasn't a random bet. It was informed. Are you willing to be wrong publicly? High conviction bets that work look genius in retrospect, but when you make them, people think you're crazy. Can you handle that pressure? What's your Michael Jordan opportunity? The person, technology, market, or trend you believe in before others do. If you've identified your high conviction bet and you're going all in, type all in on potential in the comments. By the late 1980s, Nike was large but lacked a unifying brand message. In 1988, Nike launched the Just Do It campaign, created by advertising agency Whedon plus Kennedy. The genius. Just Do It wasn't about shoes. It was about attitude, overcoming obstacles, pushing limits. It transformed Nike from a shoe company to a lifestyle brand representing determination, athletic excellence, and personal achievement. The campaign. Nike ads featured athletes of all levels. Not just superstars, but everyday people, overcoming challenges and achieving goals. The message. Nike is for anyone with athletic ambition, not just elite athletes. Impact. Just Do It became one of the most recognized slogans in history. It defined Nike's brand identity and separated them from competitors focused on product features. Sales. Nike's sales went from $800 million in 1988 to $9.2 billion in 1998. Just Do It was a major driver. Nike doesn't sell shoes in their advertising. They sell athletic excellence, overcoming obstacles, pushing your limits, being a champion. People buy Nike because of what it represents, not just shoe quality. The framework. Product-focused marketing. Our shoes have this feature and that technology. Identity-focused marketing. When you wear our shoes, you're part of a tribe of people who push limits and never quit. Which is more powerful? Identity. Always. What does your brand represent beyond product features? What identity do customers adopt when they buy from you? What tribe are they joining? Questions. If your product disappeared tomorrow, what would customers miss beyond the functional benefit? If the answer is nothing, you're selling products, not identity. What values does your brand embody? Nike. Excellence, determination, pushing limits. Apple. Creativity, innovation, thinking. Different Patagonia. Environmental responsibility, adventure. What are yours? Who's the aspirational customer? Nike's aspirational customer is the elite athlete. Regular customers buy to feel closer to that ideal. Who's your aspirational customer? Shift from selling features to selling identity and watch your brand power multiply. If you're committed to building identity-driven brands, type "identity over features" in the comments. In the 1990s, Nike faced massive criticism over labor practices in Asian factories where their shoes were made. The accusations: low wages, poor working conditions, child labor, unsafe factories. Activists protested Nike stores, universities dropped Nike sponsorships, and Phil personally became a target of criticism. Phil's initial response. Phil initially defended Nike, arguing, Nike didn't own the factories, they were contractors. Wages were competitive for those regions. Working conditions met local standards. The problem with this response: it was legally accurate but morally insufficient. The public didn't care about technicalities. They saw Nike profiting from exploitation. The shift. Eventually, Phil acknowledged Nike needed to do better. Nike implemented factory monitoring and audits, minimum standards for contractors, transparency reporting, investment in improving conditions. This didn't end criticism entirely, but it showed Nike taking responsibility. When you're small, you can fly under the radar. When you're massive and profitable, every decision is examined. The reality: as Nike grew, they couldn't hide behind, "We don't own the factories." They had to accept responsibility for their entire supply chain. This applies to any growing business. When you're small, cut corners, move fast, worry less about perfect processes. When you're large, you're held to higher standards. Adapt or face backlash. What shortcuts are you taking now that will be problems later? Identify them early and plan to fix them before they become scandals. What values do you claim publicly? Make sure your operations actually align with those values. Hypocrisy gets exposed. How transparent are you willing to be? The more successful you become, the more transparency will be demanded. What's your supply chain responsibility? Even if you don't directly control everything, you're increasingly responsible for partners' behavior. Plan for scrutiny before it arrives. It's easier to build responsibly than fix problems under public pressure. Nike went public in 1980 at 22 share. Today, those shares, split adjusted, are worth 100x plus the original price. Phil remained CEO until 2004, then executive chairman until 2016. He guided Nike for over 50 years total. The numbers: revenue, $50+ billion annually. Market cap, 200+ billion. Employees, 75,000 plus globally. Products sold, billions of shoes and apparel items. Nike became the most valuable sports brand in history, worth more than Adidas, Puma, Under Armour, and Reebok combined. Phil's net worth, over $40 billion, making him one of the richest people in the world. The legacy: Nike transformed athletic footwear industry, sports marketing, athlete endorsements, brand building, identity marketing, global manufacturing. For better and worse, Phil's impact extends far beyond shoes. He changed how brands connect with customers and how sports and commerce intersect. Let's make Phil Nait's lessons actionable for your 2026 journey. Action step 1. Start in your world. Identify an industry you're already part of. What problem can you solve with insider knowledge? Action step 2. Embrace the grind. Accept that success takes 10+ years. Start small, unglamorous, and patient. Do it anyway. Action step 3. Obsess over your craft. Use your product constantly. Notice every flaw. Experiment with improvements weekly. Action step 4. Master cash flow. Calculate your cash conversion cycle. Build a cash flow forecast. Know your runway. Action step 5. Bet early on potential. Identify one rising star, person, trend, market, before others see it. Make a bet. Action step 6. Define your identity. Write what your brand represents beyond product. What identity do customers adopt? Action step 7. Build responsibly. List shortcuts you're taking. Plan how to fix them before they become problems. Phil built Nike on these core principles. 1. Play by the rules, but be ferocious. Compete hard, but fairly. Be relentless within ethical bounds. 2. It's never just business. Phil cared deeply about running, athletes, and the product. Passion drives excellence. 3. When you first start, you have to prove yourself. Nike earned every inch. No shortcuts, no handouts, just relentless work. 4. The cowards never started. The weak died along the way. Success requires courage to start and resilience to survive the hard years. 5. Brand is everything. Product gets you in the door. Brand creates loyalty, premium pricing, and longevity. Phil Knight started selling shoes from his car trunk with 500 tal. Nearly went bankrupt multiple times, fought against dominant competitors who should have crushed him, and built the most valuable sports brand in history worth $200 billion. He did it through starting in a world he understood deeply, running, grinding for years before seeing major success, obsessive focus on product innovation, managing cash flow through constant crises, betting early on rising stars, Jordan, Prefontaine, building identity-driven marketing, just do it, taking responsibility as the company scaled. He wasn't the smartest, richest, or most connected founder. He was the most persistent, strategic, and obsessed with the craft. What are you building that you care about deeply enough to grind for 10+ years? What insider knowledge do you have that creates competitive advantage? What identity does your brand represent beyond product features? What early bet will you make before others see the potential? Phil started with $500 and a car trunk. What's your excuse? 3 things before you go. 1. Subscribe to this channel. We're breaking down legendary entrepreneurs and extracting strategies you can use. 2. Comment. What industry are you an insider in that you could disrupt? Let's identify opportunities together. 3. Share this with someone grinding through the unglamorous early stages of building. They need to hear that it takes 10+ years, and that's normal. Remember, start small, grind patiently, obsess over craft, manage cash, bet early on potential, sell identity, not features, build responsibly. This is Andre Henick. Now go build something that represents excellence and inspires people to push their limits. Just do it. See you in the next one.